What's going on, everyone? Welcome to a Tuesday edition of BYP with Q. I'm your host, as always, Rich Quinones, as we put a bow on the regular season in the NFL. Black Monday has come and gone, but yet we're still seeing the trickling down effects. Another coach, the axe is falling on Mike Rabel from the Tennessee Titans. We'll get into all that, the issues with the Philadelphia Eagles, choke jobs left and right, collapses, infighting, you name it. We got you covered over the next 20 plus minutes. Our good friend, our NFL insider, Lloyd Vance, kind enough to join us, host of Lloyd Vance's Insider Football 1029 The Game, Broad Street South on Twitter, X at Lloyd Vance. And appreciate a couple moments, pal. And I guess we'll get into all the coaching carousel in a second, because you can talk weeks for that. I do want to go in our backyard and just the debacle, the collapse that's going on right now. And trust me, watching this unfold Sunday with the Philadelphia Eagles being down 24-0 against the Giants, the fact that the Giants tried to force feed the ball to Sterling Shepard, I was ticked off because I figure they can at least put up 38. I mean, that was just a pathetic performance, pathetic game, pathetic effort. I don't care who was playing, who was out, who was injured, who wasn't. This team has absolutely no answers right now. So I'm going to ask you at this moment, they go from 10-1, 11-6. They'll go and travel to Tampa Bay on Monday night in the wild card game. What's wrong with this team right now?
A lot of things, Q. And you and I talked so much about this defense. You know, I'm a defensive minded guy, and this defense is thoroughly regressed. They finished, I think they were 30th or 31st in terms of points allowed in National Football League. So that just tells you the types of teams that they're down there with in terms of they cannot stop anybody. And you saw this in the game against the Giants. You know, the week before it was Kyler Murray and the Cardinals putting up 400 some yards. This week, the Giants put up 415 yards in the game and 311 passing yards. And this is Tyrod Taylor and then, Cutlets, so it's you're just it's like, wow, this team has really slipped. We knew they didn't have some of the personnel, but then Q, now we're talking about pure 1-2. And there were parts in that game you wonder, like, guys didn't want to be out there, and veterans should kind of be ashamed of the unit as a whole. And then Q, to really wrap a bow on it and answer your question, I think it starts at the top. Nick Sirianni, I give out my weekly lackey. He's my lackey this week. His team was ill prepared. They thought they could roll the football out. At one point, they were 10-1, beating their chest, and now they're losing to teams that are going to be picking high in the draft, and they're lipping into the playoffs. 5 out of 6 games, as you said, lost, 2 losses in a row. And,
Yeah.
this Tampa Bay game, it's nip and tuck going into it. Nobody's sure if the Eagles are going to actually show up.
Yeah, I mean, listen, we saw in the Arizona game when it was knotted up late, the wrong personnel's running out on the field. We saw against the Giants game where they fall behind 20. I mean, when was the last time the freaking Giants were leading 24-0 against the Philadelphia Eagles? I mean, now all of a sudden they're world beaters at home against the Eagles, having won 3 out of 4. They can't win in Philly. And you're right. Taylor slung it. They brought in Mariota. McKinney gets the pick. I mean, they did anything they wanted to. Saquon had some hard yards. Robinson got into the mix. The defense got into the mix. Hey, wonderful. Okay, fine. Giants close out the season with a nice one. Fine. But you look at, what's going on the sideline with Nick Sirianni. And I mentioned this a month ago. I mentioned this after last season. I mentioned going in the offseason. I mentioned before the season. I thought last year was an aberration, to some extent a fluke. I got hammered for saying it. I also thought the head coach was a fraud and exposed. I got hammered for saying it. And I think right now, I'm not going to sit here and say I told you so, because look at his record over the last several years. And he did get them to the Super Bowl last year. They could have won it. You can make a case they should have won it, and now they're back in the playoffs. All that, credit to him. But it's also to the players and the coaching staff he had around him. I think at this moment, if this team lays an egg on Monday night, the question going into the offseason is Nick Sirianni the right head coach going forward? Quote, is he on the hot seat? And I've had people text me. I've had people hit me up on social, and they said, you know what? When they were 10-1, we suspected they were not going to win another game. Blow it up, clean house. And I'm thinking to myself, I'm not going that far yet, but I think it's a fair question that is allowed to be asked. If they don't at least get to the NFC Championship, and they don't have the makeup to do it at this moment. But if they lose on Monday night and it's ugly, and these guys roll over like they've done the past month, how do you not question the head coach? I mean, is this fixable in your eyes?
Yeah, Q, it's a win now league, and they got to fix this. I just think the locker room has kind of been lost at this point, Q, and it's going to be very hard for this team to fix it. Now, I think they got a puncher's chance in this game because let's face it, the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, they only beat the Carolina Panthers 9-0 this week. Their team, who's also struggling, Todd Bowles, their head coach, is on the hot seat. So the Eagles do have a chance going into this game, but in terms of the long term fix, no, no. It's going to take an off season and fixing a situation, particularly with the coordinators. Brian Johnson, people questioning his predictability of his play calling, whether it's him, whether it's Sirianni, and then the defensive side of the football, we know Sean Desai's out, and the Matt Patricia experiment has just been an utmost failure.
Yeah.
I talked to a lot of people. They're saying Patricia was placed on his staff by the front office, and he was really not even a pick of Sirianni. And the team defensively has really regressed. You've seen this in the games that Patricia has, coordinated. So a lot
They
of
got no
things to
life.
fix, Q.
They got
Yeah, and I don't think it's going to done in 1 week. No, it's not going to all get fixed.
they might win the game, but they'll get housed by Dallas or the 49ers. I look, you want to go in the playoffs like the Rams are going to the playoffs. You win 4 out of 5, 5 out of 6. You got a little juice, a little momentum taking on Detroit. Even Dallas decided we're going to kick the snot out of Washington, leave no doubt. And would they put up 38-45, whatever the hell it was? They took care of business. And the
38 to
Eagles,
10.
yeah, the Eagles are sputtering. I mean, they're sputtering. And I just, I keep going back to the issue in that Kansas City game when A.J. Brown was bitching and complaining on the sidelines with Jalen Hurts, and Nick Sirianni walked over there and then afterwards acted like he never walked over there. And the reporters were like, what are you talking about? You walked over there. What did you say? Like, it's like the BS from this guy. I mean, it's almost to the point where it's comical. And a head coach in the National Football League doesn't leave a visitor's stadium and tunnel telling their fan base to get out or shut up or how do you like that? Like, it's just it's clownish, and that's not really what the Eagles are about. And look, let's be honest. They had that moment with Chip Kelly, and they went to the playoffs, and they should have won that game, and they ultimately got rid of Chip Kelly. I just think if it's ugly on Monday, now if they win for a week, people will forget about it. But ultimately, the regular season is a disappointment because they were 10-1. Now they're 11-6. They let home field advantage slip away. They let the number 2 seed slip away. And that it's just, you can talk about personnel. I mean, look, you've got Hassan Reddick dropping back in coverage. You can talk about the scheme. You can talk about not running the football. You can talk about Hurts trying to force feed it to A.J. Brown. It's just, I don't know. I think it's going to be, for the next 3-4 days, it's going to be the topic of discussion. I mean, it seems as though it's separated with the fan base. Some of them are just like, clean house, fire this guy. Get it over with, because we're not going anywhere this year. And after you had that taste in your mouth last year of getting to the Super Bowl, having the lead, and being a couple plays away from winning the game late.
Yeah, Q. And the important people in the room are Jeffrey Lurie, the owner,
Yeah.
and then Howie Roseman, who's the general manager. So they are taking notes, seeing how this team is underperforming coming down the stretch. And you can't put it past them, as you said, if they perform bad enough in the playoffs that they're backing into, it could be another Chip Kelly situation where they give them an ultimatum. Peterson had the same ultimatum after winning a Super Bowl, where they say changes need to be made on your staff, uh, or it's you. So,
Yeah.
it's going to be interesting to see how this thing plays out. But Sirianni, as you said, the fan base fractured. But when I look at this guy, and you said it over and over, Q, I'll give you credit. And he's not a leader of men. At this point, he's just not. You wonder, in that room, in the locker room, is everybody on the same page? And you talk about these annex, the histrionics to the fans and everything. He's just not a mature enough head coach. And I was talking about this on my show yesterday, Q. He needs a guy on his staff that has been there before and understands
Yep.
what it takes to be a head coach. You look at the Niners staff. They have Anthony Lynn on their staff,
Yep.
who was a head coach with the Chargers, and they have Steve Wilkes, who was a head coach of the Cardinals, now their defensive coordinator. These guys have been around the league. They understand situations, and it can help coach and mentor Shanahan into making right decisions. Sirianni, nobody's here to tell him no. And
That's the
his
problem.
fingerprints are all over this team and the mistakes that have been made.
Yeah, it's a great point. That's the problem. I mean, hold players accountable, hold your coaching staff accountable. All right. So we put a bow on the weekend. Jacksonville had a slide, all of a sudden Peterson's on the hot seat. Meaningless game, really, only for the division on Monday night or Sunday night. Miami and Buffalo, and Buffalo, sneaky team right now in the playoffs. Um, uh, Look, the coaching carousel, Black Monday. Let's get into that a little bit. So, no surprise, it came down. We'll kind of work our way from today backwards. Mike Rabel, Tennessee. I thought he was, we had him, on BYP, one of our head coaches on the hot seat going into the season. They had some injuries. They had inconsistent play at the quarterback position. Henry's gone. You don't know what's going on with Tannehill. And then they decide, boom, let's get rid of Mike Grable. He might not be a head coach again, but he'll be a coordinator. Are you shocked and surprised that they made the switch from him after the success he's had with Tennessee?
Yeah, a little surprising, Q. But I talked to some people, and they said they brought Vrabel in and they wanted him to change some things on his staff. I think, Q, to be honest with you, Vrabel has his eye on that Patriots job. And if Belichick has these conversations with Kraft and that job opens up, he's going to get his opportunity. I think, it ran its course with the Titans. He did a great job turning that team around, small market. You saw they always fought hard for them. Even this week, you saw them in the upset of the Jaguars. They're a team that's going to play for him. But yeah, a little surprised that he got let go and he kind of didn't leave on his terms. But I do think he's going to bounce into another job, particularly the Patriots.
6 seasons, 54 and 45, 3 playoff appearances, 3 playoff wins, 2021 coach of the year. All right. The nonsense that was between the Saints and the Falcons, and Jameis Winston basically going rogue. And afterwards, Arthur Smith having a hissy fit. Dennis Allen basically saved his job because they ran it up. And then Arthur Smith, I mean, enough is enough. Like, we'll get into Arthur Smith in a moment, but I agree with Shannon Sharp. You have a player that pulls that shit, I would cut his ass. I'm sorry. I mean, I would. I mean, you're basically going rogue. It's like trying to get the touchdown. I mentioned it last night on Martinez and Company in the last scene in Rudy. Where Vince Vaughn, they call the halfback option just so they can kick off and get Rudy on the field. Like, you can't go rogue in the NFL. You're a professional athlete. That makes Dennis Allen look like a fool. But also Arthur Smith, at least have your team kind of show up for the last game of the season. They didn't show up because they realized they don't want this guy as head coach anymore.
Yeah, and in terms of Jameis Winston and what he did or didn't do, it was a team thing. Whatever. Dennis Allen and Mickey Loomis is the general manager, and Gail Benson, the owner, they got to sit down and talk with him. And as you said, you got to follow your marching orders. And Jameis has always hung on by a thread in his career in terms of being a backup. So they may not bring him back based on this. So when I look at Arthur Smith, 3, 7, and 10 seasons in a row, never fixed the quarterback position. He put all his eggs in Desmond Ritter's basket. Okay, college quarterback coming out of Cincinnati, but never really gotten it done there with the Falcons. And then Falcons had some nice weapons, Q, that we've talked about in terms of Bijan Robinson, the young running back.
Hits.
They had Drake London, the receiver. Hits a guy who they never use.
Yep.
And then defensively, Bates had a great season, one of the best in
Mm-hmm.
terms of interceptions. So there were some things in the cover, and he just came up short. And I think him yelling at Allen and the Saints players, that was just pure frustration. He knew he was going out the door. And another guy who's probably a better coordinator than a head coach. He did a nice job with the Tennessee Titans when he was there. So the Falcons going to be looking around. They're going to be looking for a more established coach. And Fontenot, their general manager, is still going to be there. But that job is going to be an interesting one because they're going to need to probably draft a quarterback as well.
Unbelievable. I love when people hit me up on Twitter. Joe, this is from last night. Joe chimed in on Twitter. Joe D said, Q, trading, the more I think about it, trading A.J. Brown was one of the worst moves that the Eagles have ever made. I mean, Uh,
Well, I
Is it
think
possible
I think
maybe it's the Titans' worst move, not the
yeah,
Eagles?
the Eagles, they got a guy who's a dominant player, and him and Smith both put up 1,000 yards this year. They had 1,000 yard rusher, 4,000 yard passer. So they were still putting up some yardage. But we talked about, I think about a week ago, I said to you, he's kind of baby To. He's a guy, he wanted to have that players only meeting, and there's some disconnect between him and
There has
the
to be.
locker room, and Jalen Hurts. They always said they were best buddies and everything, but it sure didn't look like it to me. And then unfortunately, they do need him because he opens it up for everybody else. He has that knee injury against the Giants, and we'll see how they go from there. But the thing is, I felt that Hurts was kind of not intimidated by him, but he tried to force the ball way too much to AJ Brown throughout the season. That's why you saw his interception climbed, and he's throwing it a double, triple coverage because either Brown wanted the ball a lot or he trusted him too much.
Yeah, I'm telling you that AJ Brown's a great wide receiver. I don't. It was a great trade. I mean, Tennessee was the fool there, um, and they're going to have wholesale changes. It's just sometimes a head coach doesn't have any answers. Speaking of a head coach that had no answers, Ron Rivera. I mean, it was almost like a mercy killing, right? They rolled over. You knew it was inevitable. Classy as they come, average head coach, average head coach at best. They've got some players. I think they might start looking at a bridge quarterback, depending upon who comes in. Now, the question is, we knew Rivera was going to be gone. What happens with Eric Bieniemy?
Yeah, Q. All these guys are still under contract. These assistant coaches, and unless they were thoroughly tied to the head coach, they're going to retain that contract or wait until around the Senior Bowl or something. Look how the staff shake out. Maybe they can bring a new coach in there that will kind of say, okay, we'll still take on Bieniemy and have him do the offensive coordinator job. He did do a nice job this season in terms of they did. Hal was able to move the football, and
Yep.
they put up some points, but their defense was very bad. And Ron Rivera, as you said, stoic head coach, did a nice job cleaning up a lot of Daniel Snyder's messes. But now, new owner and Joshua Harris, and they're probably going to look for. Um, they brought in the old Golden State
Yeah.
front
One of
office
the,
guy
yep.
and Spielman. Who was with the Vikings, their general manager, kind of helped sort this thing out. They do have Martin Mayhew there, who is still their general manager. So we'll see how this front office sorts itself out. But I think there's going to be a lot of house cleaning. They're going to start anew. They have that second overall pick, and they're going to get either Caleb Williams or Drake May, whoever falls in their lap.
Yeah, that'll be interesting too, because when you think about it, if you go to, I'll pull it up. And again, Tuesday edition BYP, Rich Quinones here, Lloyd Vance, kind enough to join us from our good friends over at Play It Again Sports. I pulled up Tankathon, and in right now, you've got that first. Remember, Carolina has 33 and 65 from the Bears. So mock wise, they've got Washington, New England, Arizona, the Chargers, the Giants, Tennessee, Atlanta, Chicago. They got Chicago drafting Caleb Williams, which tells me Justin Fields, right, is going to get traded. He's going to be on the market. Um, you've got Atlanta going with an edge rusher. I'm just trying to find the quarterbacks. Number 3, New England, they go with Jaden Daniels. Washington, Drake May. And then how about, Arizona all of a sudden they want to stick with Kyler Murray because they know they have a really good shot of getting Marvin Harrison Jr. But be that as it may, it'll be interesting to see who lands in certain positions like Antonio Pierce. Has he done enough? Was that win over Kansas City? I know, guys can sit there and say, yeah, people play for him, they love him, this and that, but the sustainability, right? I mean, 4 or 5 game stretch, that's great. But what about the entire grind of a 20-week NFL season, right? 17, 18 weeks, potentially the playoffs, the offseason, OTAs, training camp, the draft. I mean, that's 24/7. You don't leave the office. Do you believe Antonio Pierce has done enough to earn that head coaching job with the Raiders? Because I'll say this, if they don't retain him and the Giants jettison Wink Martindale, I would love for Pierce to come in and be DC with the Giants.
Yeah, so Martindale he resigned yesterday, so that there's an opening there for that defense coordinator. And everybody I talk to, they all say Mark Davis is a wild card. You don't know what he's going to do. Last time he had Basha there, and he did a nice job, and he jettisoned him for McDaniels, who was a shiny new toy. And I have a feeling that that's what the Raiders are going to kind of go with again. They also let go their general manager Ziegler into this shakeup so they got to get a new GM and a head coach, and they're going to probably make a combination. So you have a guy like Ben Johnson. I'll just throw his name out there. You know, he's the hot offense coordinator with the Detroit Lions at this time. You had Jim Harbaugh win the national championship
Yeah.
last season in Michigan. He'll be on the market as well. So I think the Raiders are going to bring one of these guys in, but whoever they bring in is probably going to want to either pick their GM or kind of have say over personnel, and that's going to be interesting there. So I think right now Antonio Pierce will get an interview. They'll probably say nice job and then let him go on his way. But I just think that the Raiders always seem to look at their history. They picked the wrong guy over and over again. I don't think they made the playoffs or won a playoff game in over 10 years. So they're a team. They probably Davis maybe should listen to people around the league and his locker room, because you're right. Pierce has done a nice job, and the players want to play for him. I heard Devontae Adams talking about how much he liked the coach and what he had changed, but I just see the Raiders kind of moving a different direction.
Ron Rivera, 26 and 40 and 1, 39% win percentage, fired. Mike Grable, 54-45, 55% clip, fired. Arthur Smith, 21 and 30, 41% clip, fired. Matt Eberflus, 10 and 24, 29% winning percentage, and it seems as though he's safe. I mean, if you're Justin Fields, get the kid out of there, and you're Caleb Williams, avoid Chicago at all costs. That boils down to the GM. I mean, it's almost like standard now in Chicago Bears football, one storied and proud franchise. I can't see a guy like Belichick, if it's eventually going to be official and he parts way. I think there is a 15 to 25% chance that Belichick stays with New England. But first, we'll go. Yeah, we'll go to Chicago. I mean, it's what is it? 3:00 Eastern time on a Tuesday. I mean, I've lost all track of time anyway. It doesn't matter. Tuesday edition of BYP. But Eberflus, I mean, are you shocked that this guy still has the keys to get into the building?
It's interesting, Q, because he survived. You know, they had the big win. They kind of laid an egg the last game of the season against the Packers, but you know, they had a few wins down the stretch. I think they won 3 of the last 4, and Fields kind of played well. But Ryan Poles is the general manager there. He came in with Eberflus and George McCaskey, who's the owner there. They seem to want to give Eberflus another opportunity. He's under contract for I think the next couple of years. So I think, yeah, it's their decision. I wouldn't bring him back. You know, the team regressed and everything, but they seem to want to bring him back, and they're going to bring Poles in there. A young quarterback is going to be taken, and they're going to try to go a new direction. And I think Fields will be traded, maybe go to Atlanta. That's where he's from, or some other team. But the Bears, in terms of the pecking order, they're underneath some of these other jobs, you know. And you talk about maybe Belichick coming out there, Harbaugh. I think a lot of guys are looking at that Chargers job first, and then kind of going from there.
Yeah. So if Belichick leaves New England, kind of to your point, you would think Mike Grable would be a good fit, obviously, with the familiarity and the success he had as a player with the organization. What do you believe, and this is purely speculation, what do you believe it'll take for Belichick and Kraft and the brass to decide, you know what, we're kind of going to give you a free pass because you had a lot on the plate. We know about the draft selections, they haven't been there. You have an opportunity, maybe get a Jaden Daniels, maybe get a wide receiver, number 34, you know, the kid from Oregon, the kid Franklin's name is floating out there. Daniels, the quarterback from LSU, and number 3, start over, get rid of Zappy Dappy Doo, get rid of Mac Jones, and, you know, 2 years, let's try to play some competitive football because Rodgers is getting older, Miami looks flawed, and Buffalo's window is closing. So what do you think that conversation would entail? And again, 15-25% that, hey, Bill Belichick's coming back for another season.
Yeah, Q. And these conversations me and had, I heard Kraft and Belichick already met, and they're kind of talking this over, and nothing was set in stone. So uh, it's going to be Robert Kraft saying, am I going to continue paying this guy for past performance? It is, does he trust him to be the architect of this team to rebuild? Now, they're saying if Belichick comes back, he will bring Josh McDaniels back to be his offensive coordinator, and maybe that'll help fix some things with the offense. But then in terms of personnel, he's probably going to have to give that up. So maybe he'll bring in Ziegler, who was with the Patriots for a number of years before he went to the Raiders, or even a guy like Scott Pioli. He's still around. He's working for NFL Network. He lives still in the New England area.
Yep.
Maybe he could come back and help that, you know, clean that situation up. But it's going to be on Belichick. You know what I mean? Q, it's going to be on him to say, you know what, has this run its course here? And also Kraft to say, enough's enough. I want to take my team back, because he's given him total control, had a lot of success, but over the last couple of years, as we know, they've missed the playoffs 2 out of the last 3 years. This year, 4-win team, and they just were terrible.
I feel Harbaugh kind of hinted he wants to return to Michigan, right? That's the biggest FU, winning the national title. They suspended him. And I mean, it's amazing that line was what, 4.5. I mean, my goodness, if you didn't load up last night on Michigan, some of you guys are goofy, but be that as it may, well, you bet what you have, can afford to bet, I should say. But I knew that game was not going to be competitive. It was an absolute blowout. I think Michael Penix is a nice quarterback. I don't think GMs really like left-handed quarterbacks. To be honest, those days are kind of over, but story for another day when we get closer to the draft. So Harbaugh is going to be the new version of a Gruden every single year. Open up the checkbook. Here we go. Chicago, the Chargers, the Raiders, Washington, crystal ball. If Harbaugh decides, I want another crack here, man. I want another crack here. I'll give you my dark horse. And I think I mentioned it to you several times. And again, I don't care if people laugh because you've seen enough to know no matter what, nothing is ever written in stone. But let's just say the Dallas Cowboys losing the NFC Championship or get bounced in the divisional round. As well as McCarthy, I should say, as well as the Cowboys played this year, because McCarthy's still goofy throwing the ball the other night. If Jerry Jones is like, man, Harbaugh flirting with the location. See, you got to be careful here because the guy can say, I'm coming out and then renege on it. And then you've got rid of a head coach. I mean, that's the game that you play. That's why these guys make millions and billions of dollars. But that would be a potential dark horse of a landing spot. The other one I think would be a good fit. I think it would be going back to either familiarity with the Chargers or the Bears.
Yeah, and Q, I'll throw one in there for Harbaugh. Washington, the way they're trying to change things up and get younger and bringing a fresh face in there, that could be a place for him. And I think Harris would give him the opportunity to come in there and run the show, personnel and
Yeah.
also coaching the team. So, and he'd also be his brothers in Baltimore, maybe like to relocate to there, and then they'd all be in the same area. But as you said, it's all going to start with Michigan. And does Michigan want to write him that big check? And does he want to prove himself once again in the National Football League? As we know, unfinished business. He lost to his brother in the Super Bowl, that Niners team losing to the Ravens. But in the end, I still think Harbaugh wants to show people he can win in the National Football League. He's mission accomplished, as you said, in college, got it done. He built a team that was physical and could dominate anybody. They beat SEC teams and they win the national championship. So I think one of these owners is going to get enamored with him, and he's going to be one of the. They're going to probably make him the highest paid coach to
That's
come
what I
to
was going to
national.
ask you. So you figure, what was it, 2 years ago, Michigan decided to renew his contract, right? I think it was 35, base salary was 550. So he gets a set of win the national championship, 5 million, boom, another 12, life insurance policy, all that kind of stuff. Dallas might open up the checkbook. I mean, can you see another Gruden-esque type of contract, 10 years. What was it? 100 and plus something million dollars.
Yeah, now Q that Dallas is interesting too because Jerry Jones, he loves going on his radio shows and talking, and he is McCarthy. He's given, he's given
Lukewarm.
him a vote of comments, but it was not a strong one, and so he needs to get it done in playoffs. Luckily for Dallas, they get the number 2 seed, and they're going to have probably the first 2 round games in Dallas, and where they are undefeated and. If they keep winning, yes, I think McCarthy will get that extension that he wants. But as you said, if they lose Jerry Jones, who wants to win now, he may pull the trigger and fire a coach that's won 12 games for the
Yeah.
last couple of years, and that would be a total surprise. So, but the thing is, could Jerry Jones, a meddler, survive with a coach that wants to run the show? That's
Vice
the
versa,
key thing.
or vice
Yeah.
versa. Can
Yeah,
Harbaugh
and
deal with that?
it would be a soap opera. It would be a total soap opera. So,
And then,
Dallas is always interesting, and we got to see how Dak plays in the playoffs because we know Dak when the lights come on, sometimes he comes up short in the playoffs.
yeah, it's a good point. Lastly, Jacksonville had a monumental collapse, man. Uh, Doug Peterson fired defensive coordinator Mike Caldwell, multiple assistants on Monday. Defensive line coach, Bredesen Buckner, passing game coordinator, quarterbacks coach, linebackers coach, safeties coach, the Walter boy, the guy that fills the Gatorade jugs, everyone, right? Hey, Doug, you also didn't coach particularly well this year. And I know they had some injuries and Lawrence and banged up, but you want to talk about a team that had a slide, right? I mean, that is a major slide. Does Doug Peterson go into the offseason on the hot seat now?
He does Q because much like when he was here in Philadelphia, these were his loyal lieutenants, and he had to make a decision. It was either them or him, and so he decided Mike Caldwell, a guy he brought with him from Philadelphia, him and his defensive staff were not getting done. Obviously, that loss to Tennessee, where their season just went awry,
Yep.
and they knocked them out of the playoffs. Yes, they're 9-18, but to answer your question, I do think he's going to come in with a hot seat. And Shad Khan, their owner, is another guy who's kind of he's reactionary. So um, he's going to have to get it done. And Trevor Lawrence, if he's his guy, they picked him number 1 overall. He's going to have to pick up his play because he had way too many turnovers
Yep.
this season and came up short, as you said, down the stretch. That team was 8-3 at one point in this season.
All right, Saturday, Browns, Texans, Miami, and the Chiefs. Weather's going to wreak havoc on the East Coast. Steelers, Bills, Pack, Dallas, Rams, Lions, Birds, Bucks, Monday night to cap it off. Later on the week, Thursday, we'll go around these playoffs. We'll dive into them. We'll give you the picks, our thoughts and scores as well. You already mentioned to me that Sirianni Lackey of the Week.
Yeah, I had to give it to Sirianni because the Eagles just continue to come up short, and it's incredible. It's getting to like Rich Kotite
Is
situation. I
this
don't
is
know.
this a collapse or
Right
fraud?
now it is
Or
5 of the last 6 games, and there's no fight in this team. They just rolled over against the Giants, and that was after they came up short against Arizona, one of the worst teams in the league as well. The week before. So you're wondering, can he fix this thing? And you know, does he have a plan? And then he comes to the press conference and he's like, I don't know. So yeah, he gets my lackey because what is he doing and where is his team going?
I still believe the 49ers broke them. I believe the 49ers broke them mentally and they broke them physically. Game ball. Was it a quarterback?
Yes.
I'm going to go CJ Stroud. And I didn't go on Twitter.
No, I didn't put him out there yet, but that's a great pick. That was a great game. I really enjoyed watching that. The Colts put up a nice fight, and then the Texans. What a great story!
Yeah.
D'Amico Ryan's probably going to be Coach of the Year. C.J. Stroud, Rookie of the Year, but he was not my pick. I had to give it to another quarterback. I'll give you one more chance.
Is it a playoff bound quarterback?
Yes.
Not Mason Rudolph.
Oh no! Oh,
Not Goff. Not Stafford. I would say at Josh Allen.
that's it. That's it. I had to, Josh Allen built his team to victory. that was a good watch as well. I know that game turned on Hardy's punt return
Yeah,
for a touchdown, and Allen started a little slow, but he was willing his team to victory. I mean, 30 of 38, 359, two TDs. He did
great
have those
player.
two bad picks a couple times where you're like, where is he throwing the ball? But to me, it was the 15 rushes for 67 yards, and he just kept the chains moving over and over again. 9 of 15 in terms of third downs, and 1 of 3 on fourth down. So, they've almost stole the Eagles' tush push the way they were doing that with him and Fournette, and they were just grinding the clock. Great win for him, willed his team to victory. He gets my game ball.
He he's accounted for almost 5,000 total yards. And I know he throws picks because he's got that gunslinger mentality. He tries a little too much, but he also has accounted for 29 passing touchdowns, 15 rushing touchdowns. So we're looking at almost 5,000 yards and 44 touchdowns. I mean, I know he's not going to win the MVP. It's going to be
Yeah,
Lamar Jackson, but you're right. This
he should be
team
in the
was,
conversation.
yeah, this team was 6-6. And by the way, they should have beat the Eagles, but he missed that throw. And they've ripped off 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 in a row to get to 11-6. And I think early on right now, I think they whitewash Pittsburgh. I mean,
Yeah,
I
and
Pittsburgh to me is
they're
like
the number
one.
2 seed.
Yeah, Pittsburgh to me
And the
is like
road
one of
goes through
those.
Buffalo. That was a huge win for them.
Yeah,
It just showed once again that the Dolphins were paper champions. And you're right, they won 5 straight games.
yeah,
It's gonna be cold, it's gonna be rainy, and this is what the Bills want. They wanted to be home. They've proven themselves, and I do agree with you. Uh, Early look at this game, the Steelers are in for world of trouble. I'm not sure TJ Watt's going to play in this game.
yep.
He's got an MCL, and they have some other injuries, so we can break it all down later week. But the Bills are ascending team, man.
Yeah, 100%. We'll do that on cue later in the week. Lloyd Vance, host of 1029, in 1029, the game, Broad Street South. Lloyd Vance is Insider Football. That is tonight.
Now we recorded last night. We had a nice show, me and Kevin Midget, and it's fun. We piggybacked on a lot of the topics that you talked about on Martinez and company with Angel. I listened to the majority of your show. A lot of fun, and then Kevin and I just picked it up.
Good.
There was a lot of Eagles talk, a lot of Eagles rant. We're here in the Delaware Valley in Philadelphia area, and this team,
It's
they're struggling, man.
listen, if it's just, it would be one of the worst collapses, I believe, not only in Philadelphia sports history, but NFL history, because if you go back, the Jets in 1986 were 10-1. Okay. And the great, I believe it was,
Michaels, right?
no, it was Paul McGuire. Remember he played for the Browns?
Okay.
Paul McGuire, and I want to pull it up. I have to find the clip, but Paul McGuire said on the NFL Today that he believes the Jets will not win another game. And they finished 10-6. I believe they beat Kansas City in the wild card game. That's when Kansas City had, who the hell was that quarterback? It wasn't Blackledge, Bill Kinney. But then the
Kenny, yeah.
Jets, but then the Jets lost to the Browns, and I remember that game like it was yesterday because that was the roughing the passer on, I think, 3rd and 15 by Mark Gastineau, and that game eventually went into overtime. And I was driving back from an indoor soccer tournament, and we had the game at that time. I think it was either on WOR or WFAN, and they lost that game 16-13, which was January 3rd, 1987. And obviously the Giants were just ransacking everyone in the playoffs, beat the 49ers, beat Washington, and then went to the Super Bowl. Everyone was talking about Jets and Giants in the Super Bowl. So I'm going to have to find that clip. And it was on the NFL Today. And it was, he said it just so, he was so confident the Jets will not win another game. And
Yeah,
I'll do you one better real quick before I let you go. I'm wondering, I believe that team, they were coached.
Walt Michaels, I think, right?
No, Joe Walton. And
Oh, it was Joe Walton.
yep, and he came back the next year, the strike shortened season, coached 19 until 1988. Coach actually a couple years after until Bruce Cosley. Yeah. Walt Michaels was earlier, but yeah, it's just this kind of when you go from being 10-1 to having a number one seed, head coach of the year, and NFL MVP to 11-6. And look, if they get to the divisional round or they get to the NFC Championship and they lose, I still think people are going to be ultimately disappointed. But man, I think a lot of it will stem from the fact that look how they closed the season. You want to be you want something to build upon, even a drive, a half, a series, win 2, 3, 4 out of 5, 5 out of 6. Buffalo, the Rams, get that good favor, build up that equity going into the playoffs. They've done the complete opposite, man. They've just, like you said, I mean, they just, and then, I failed to mention this, and we have to talk about it real quick before I let you go. How about the fact that Dallas Goedert said, well, it was a couple of weeks ago, he insinuated they pretty much have put everything on cruise control. Like,
Yeah.
dude, you don't say that out loud.
Yeah, and who are they to think they can collide into the end of the season, end of the playoffs? And their roster was solid, but come on, you're struggling, and you didn't win the Super Bowl last year. Okay, you lost. They should be hungry. They should have a lot to prove, and they have it. And as you said, I'm looking at most of the teams that are coming into the playoffs. The Texans 2-game winning streak going in, Chiefs 2-game winning streak, Dallas 2-game winning streak, Packers 3 games, Steelers 3, Rams 4, Bills 5.
There you
All
go.
these teams are finishing strong at the finish, the championship rounds, as we always talk about. And you have the Eagles and the Dolphins going in on 2 straight losses, both of them backing in. And it just shows you once again, the title is not won in
No,
November.
no.
And everything can change quickly around the National Football League.
Yeah, great stuff, my friend. All right, Lloyd Vance, give him a follow on social media at Lloyd Vance, part of Broad Street South Network, host of Lloyd Vance Insider Football, always kind enough to join us, part of BYP and On Q as well. We'll break down all the playoff games and the lines and the ins and outs. We'll do that later in the week, but always appreciate a couple moments, pal.
All right, Q, thanks for having me on.